There's a specific kind of loneliness that only the ignored child knows. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being invisible in a room full of people who were supposed to see you. You learned to celebrate birthdays quietly, to process heartbreak in silence, to achieve things with no one watching. You became the child who didn't ask for help, because asking meant waiting for an answer that never came. The kid who stopped sharing excitement, because enthusiasm met with indifference hurts worse than keeping joy to yourself. And now, you're the adult who feels guilty for wanting attention, who apologizes for existing, who's perfected the art of disappearing while standing right in front of someone. If that's you, you didn't just survive childhood. You developed 6 rare traits that most people will never understand. You know this feeling if you ever stood in the kitchen doorway, rehearsing what you wanted to say, waiting for someone to look up from their phone and notice you were there. Maybe it started when your siblings' meltdowns got all the attention, while you learned that being quiet meant being forgotten. So, you became quieter, easier, invisible. Or perhaps it was those family dinners where everyone else's day mattered, and by the time they got to you, the conversation had moved on. So, you stopped trying to share. You became the kid who didn't ask for help with homework because no one had time. The teenager who stopped inviting parents to school events because the disappointment of empty chairs hurt worse than not asking at all. You learned to read the room, obsessively, to gauge everyone's emotional temperature, to make yourself small enough that you didn't add to anyone's stress. You celebrated wins alone in your bedroom, processed losses by yourself, became entirely self-sufficient, because depending on others meant setting yourself up for that familiar ache. Your needs became optional, your feelings inconvenient, your presence something you had to earn. And now, years later, you're the adult who struggles to take up space, who minimizes everything about yourself, who feels like an imposter in your own life. You've spent so long being the person no one noticed that even when people try to see you now, you don't know how to let them. You've forgotten what it feels like to matter, or maybe you never learned in the first place. This is what psychologists call childhood emotional neglect, specifically the invisible child or lost child pattern in family systems theory. The concept was explored extensively by Dr. Jonice Webb in her research on emotional neglect. It's different from overt abuse. There were no bruises, no screaming, just the quiet, persistent absence of attunement. It develops because in every family system, there's only so much emotional bandwidth to go around. When siblings are louder, parents are overwhelmed, or caregivers are dealing with their own unprocessed trauma, the quiet child falls through the cracks. You became invisible not because you were unworthy, but because you were easy. You didn't require much. You adapted. And in adapting, you disappeared. This wasn't your fault. You were a child doing what children do, learning to survive in the environment you were given. If being quiet meant less disappointment, you became quiet. If needing nothing meant avoiding rejection, you needed nothing. If disappearing meant keeping the peace, you mastered vanishing. Your brain made the best decision it could with the information it had. You survived the only way you knew how. And those survival strategies, they didn't just help you get through childhood. They shaped who you became as an adult. They gave you 6 specific traits that mark you as someone who grew up unseen. If you're relating to this right now, like really relating, you're in the right place. This is Unfelt, where we explore the psychology behind what you feel but can't always put into words, the stuff that doesn't fit neatly into Instagram captions. All right, let's go deeper. Being the ignored child rarely happens in a vacuum. It emerges from specific family dynamics that taught you invisibility was safer than visibility. Maybe you had a sibling with special needs who required most of your parents' energy, or a sibling who was charismatic, troubled, or simply louder. The squeaky wheel got the oil, and you learned that not squeaking meant not mattering. Perhaps your parents were going through a divorce, dealing with financial stress, managing mental health struggles, or emotionally unavailable due to their own unhealed wounds. They were physically present, but emotionally absent. The crucial years are typically between 6 and 12, when children develop their sense of self-worth and learn what to expect from relationships. What you needed was attunement, someone who noticed not just what you said, but what you didn't say. Someone who could read your face and ask, "You seem quiet today. What's going on?" Instead, you became your own parent. The part of you that should have been carefree was managing adult-sized emotional responsibilities, regulating your feelings, meeting your needs, solving your problems alone. This creates what psychologists call a developmental disruption in attachment. Children need to feel seen, safe, and significant to develop secure attachment. When that doesn't happen, the child learns that connection is unreliable and self-reliance is survival. Your identity formation got interrupted. Instead of discovering who you were through being witnessed by caring adults, you learned to shape yourself around the negative space of others' attention. Boundaries dissolved because you never learned you were entitled to have them. And emotionally, you were forced to grow up too fast. You became the one who could handle things. Parentification happened not through being given responsibilities, but through being given nothing and having to figure everything out yourself. As Dr. Gabor Mate writes in Scattered Minds, the greatest damage done by neglect, trauma, or emotional loss is not the immediate pain they inflict, but the long-term distortions they induce in the way a developing child will continue to interpret the world. That interpretation became your operating system. You didn't just think you were unimportant. You built your entire personality around that belief. The ignored child doesn't stay a child, they grow up. And the survival strategies that help them navigate childhood become the traits that mark their adult life. Here are the 6 rare traits you developed. 1. Hyper-independence that borders on isolation. You don't just prefer doing things yourself, you're almost incapable of asking for help. The idea of depending on someone makes your skin crawl. You're the friend who shows up for everyone's crisis but disappears when you're struggling. You'd rather suffer in silence than risk the vulnerability of needing someone. This developed because asking for help as a child meant disappointment. Your brain learned, don't ask, don't need, don't trust. What it costs you is real intimacy. People can't get close to someone who won't let them in. You know this if you've been complimented for being so independent and felt it land like an insult. 2. The chameleon effect, you become what others need. You don't have a strong sense of self because you spent your formative years shape-shifting to be less burdensome. In social situations, you read the room and adjust. With friends, you mirror their interests. In relationships, you mold yourself to your partner's preferences. This developed as survival. If being your authentic self didn't get you noticed, maybe being what others wanted would. What it costs you is knowing who you actually are. You've performed for so long, you've lost the plot of your own personality. You know this if someone's asked, but what do you want? And you genuinely couldn't answer. 3. Over-apologizing and minimizing your needs. Sorry becomes your default. You apologize for taking up space, for having feelings, for existing in a way that might inconvenience someone. You minimize everything. Your pain is not that bad. Your achievements are no big deal. Your needs are always less important than everyone else's. This developed because as a child, your needs were treated as optional. So, you learn to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. What it costs you is self-respect. You've trained everyone to treat you as an afterthought. You know this if you've been told, stop apologizing for everything, and immediately said, sorry. 4. Emotional numbness, masquerading as calmness. People think you're calm, level-headed, unflappable. They don't realize you're not calm, you're disconnected. You've suppressed emotions for so long, you barely feel them. Anger gets swallowed, sadness gets buried, even joy feels muted. This developed because expressing emotions as a child didn't lead to comfort. It led to being ignored, so you shut it all down. What it costs you is the full spectrum of human experience. You're numb to everything. Life feels flat. You know this if someone's asked, "Are you okay?" And you said, "I'm fine," while genuinely believing it, even though you haven't felt okay in years. 5. You're the eternal observer, never the main character. You watch life happen to other people. You're supportive, present for everyone's story, but never the protagonist of your own. In group photos, you're taking the picture. In conversations, you're asking questions. You've perfected being present without being noticed. This developed because you spent childhood watching everyone else get the spotlight. You learned your role was to witness, not be witnessed. What it costs you is living fully. You're the supporting character in everyone else's narrative. You know this if you felt more real as a reflection in someone else's eyes than in your own. 6. Guilt over being happy or successful. When good things happen, you feel wrong about it. Guilty, like you don't deserve it. You downplay wins, deflect compliments, feel uncomfortable when attention is on you for positive reasons. This developed because childhood taught you that being noticed for achievements didn't guarantee celebration. So, success became something to hide. What it costs you is joy. You can't savor good things because you're always waiting for someone to tell you you're taking up too much space. You know this if you've achieved something significant and thought, I hope no one makes a big deal about this. Okay, real talk. Which one of those 6 traits hit the hardest? Drop a number in the comments, 1 through 6. And if this is your first time watching Unfelt, hit subscribe. We make deep psychological content like this every single week. Content that actually gets it. All right, let's keep going. What happened to you as the ignored child wasn't just emotional. It was neurological. Your developing brain was shaped by the absence of attunement, and that shaping has physical consequences in your adult nervous system. The amygdala is your brain's threat detection center. In children who grow up with emotional neglect, it becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for danger, rejection, abandonment. Your brain learned that people are unpredictable, so it went into overdrive, trying to protect you from being overlooked again. This is why you're always reading between the lines, why you catastrophize, why a slight change in someone's tone makes you spiral. The prefrontal cortex handles emotional regulation and sense of self. It develops through co-regulation, having caregivers help you manage big feelings. But if no one was there to co-regulate, your prefrontal cortex didn't get the practice it needed. This is why your emotions feel overwhelming or non-existent, why decision-making feels paralyzing, why your sense of self feels unstable. Your body literally remembers all those years of being unseen. Chronic emotional neglect shows up as fatigue, sleep problems, digestive issues, muscle tension. Your nervous system learned it couldn't fully relax because safety was never guaranteed. Your brain's ability to rewire itself is called neuroplasticity, and it's real. The same brain that adapted to neglect can adapt to being seen. The same nervous system that learned to shut down can learn to stay present. It takes time. It takes the kind of consistent, attuned relationships you didn't get as a kid. But healing is possible. Your brain is not fixed. Your story is not over. Before we talk about healing, let's talk about what healing actually looks like. Because if you grew up ignored, you probably have some fantasy about finally being seen, finally mattering, finally feeling whole. But I don't want to feed you toxic positivity bullshit. Healing from childhood emotional neglect is not linear. It's not a smooth upward trajectory where every day you feel better until you're magically fixed. It's messy. 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. It's having a breakthrough in therapy on Tuesday and completely dissociating by Thursday. And that's normal. You're not failing at healing. You're healing like a human, not like a self-help book promised. The timeline is longer than you want. We're talking years, not months. Decades of conditioning don't undo themselves in a weekend workshop. You need to give yourself permission to take as long as you need. You also need to distinguish between restorative solitude and isolative avoidance. One is healing. The other is re-traumatizing yourself. Learn the difference. Here are 4 concrete practices that can help you start reclaiming yourself. 1. Reparenting through internal dialogue. What? Dialogue with the part of yourself that's stuck in childhood, the part that still feels ignored and invisible. Why? You can't get the childhood you deserved, but you can give your inner child the attention they needed. How? Set aside time each week to check in with your younger self. Ask, what did you need today that you didn't get? Then meet that need. If young you needed to be told they mattered, tell them. Become the parent you needed. Expect. This will feel awkward at first. You might cry. You might feel nothing. Keep doing it anyway. 2. Practice taking up space in low-stakes situations. What? Deliberately do things that make you visible in contexts where the risk is minimal. Why? Your nervous system needs evidence that being seen doesn't always lead to pain. How? Start small. Order something specific at a restaurant instead of saying, I'm fine with whatever. Share an opinion in a group chat. Wear something that makes you feel noticed. Each time you make yourself visible and survive it, you're building new neural pathways. Expect discomfort, anxiety, the urge to minimize yourself again. Do it anyway. 3. Set one boundary per week. What? Identify one small boundary you need and enforce it. Why? Boundaries teach you and others that you matter. How? Start manageable. I can't talk right now. I'll call you later. I need alone time this weekend. Say it clearly. Don't over-explain. Don't apologize. Expect guilt. So much guilt. Your brain will tell you you're being selfish. You're not. You're being human. 4. Find a therapist who specializes in childhood. Emotional neglect. What? Work with someone trained in trauma-informed therapy, EMDR, somatic experiencing, or psychodynamic therapy. Why? You can't think your way out of a nervous system problem. How? Look for therapists who list childhood trauma or emotional neglect as specialties. Ask if they're familiar with Jonice Webb, Bessel van der Kolk, or Pete Walker. Expect. It will take time to find the right fit. The right therapeutic relationship can be the corrective emotional experience you never had. So what does healed look like? It doesn't look like perfection. It doesn't look like never feeling invisible again. Healed looks like recognizing when you're shrinking yourself and choosing not to. It looks like asking for what you need, even when your voice shakes. It looks like being in a room full of people and not constantly calculating whether you matter to them because you've started mattering to yourself. It looks like disappointing someone and not immediately assuming you're worthless. It looks like celebrating your wins out loud instead of in the privacy of your head. It looks like letting people see you, the real you, and trusting that if they leave, you'll survive it. Healed looks like breaking the generational pattern, like being the parent who notices their kid's mood shift before the kid says anything. It looks like being able to say, "I was the ignored child," without it being your entire identity. You don't forget what it felt like to be invisible, but you stop living like you still are. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask you something. If you could tell your younger self one thing about being the ignored child, what would it be? Drop it in the comments. Because Unfelt isn't just a channel. It's a community where people actually understand each other. And someone out there needs to hear what you have to say. If you made it this far, you now understand that being the ignored child gave you something most people don't have. You have profound empathy because you know what it feels like to be unseen. You have incredible observational skills because you had to learn to read rooms to survive. You have resilience that runs bone deep because you've been raising yourself since you were too young to know that's what you were doing. We started this video talking about the loneliness of being overlooked in rooms full of people who should have noticed. But here's the truth. You were never actually invisible. You were just surrounded by people who weren't looking. And now you're learning to look at yourself, to see yourself, to become the witness you always needed. That's the work. That's the healing. The psychologist Alice Miller wrote in The Drama of the Gifted Child, the true opposite of depression is not gaiety or absence of pain, but vitality, the freedom to experience spontaneous feelings. Healing isn't about becoming happy all the time or erasing your past. It's about reclaiming your right to feel, all of it. The anger you weren't allowed to express, the sadness you had to hide, the joy you felt guilty celebrating. You spent your childhood muting yourself. Healing is turning the volume back up. You're not too much. You're not too needy. You're not unworthy of attention. You're a person who survived being unseen by becoming your own witness. And now you're learning to be seen, not just acknowledged, truly seen. If this hit home for you, you're exactly where you need to be. On Unfelt, we dive deep into psychology like this every single week. Hit subscribe if you want more of this kind of content. And in the comments, tell me, what topic should I cover next? Drop your suggestions. I read every single one. Take care of yourself. And remember, you're not alone.